think we're ready to roll. Let me just get this turned on for you guys here. And zooming on that in. And the good news is for you guys that are here in person is I just was talking to Dwight. We have a different projector we're gonna get in here. So it's a little bit, although it doesn't look so blurry today, does it?
I'm setting a lot closer today, so I'm not sure.
You don't know if it's closer or what.
Yeah.
All right, well, here we go. So same thing we talked about when we did this with the seller packet. I always want to start this class by just pointing out that, again, right under where it says exclusive buyer broker agreement, it says this is a legally binding agreement. And so read carefully before signing. So just as a reminder, this is a legally binding agreement. Now, with that being said, where I always want to start this class of talking about is, and I don't know the answer to why, well, I have some ideas, but I don't know why, but the listing paperwork, the exclusive right to sell listing agreement is one that, and I'm not talking about just our brokerage, but brokerages in general. The exclusive right to sell listing agreement is one that brokerages tend to be very like, no, you signed an agreement with us. Like, you don't just get to just walk away. But for whatever reason, and this, I think this probably goes across the country, not just even here in Utah, but so again, not just Everest, but for some reason, even though this is a legally binding agreement, brokerages don't tend to enforce it very often. In fact, I can only think of, and I don't even know if I can actually think of a real scenario. I know of at least one where the brokerage said, no, you signed this and we will take you to court. I don't know that I know of any from, and I'm not saying there aren't any, I'm sure there are, but I don't personally know of any in over 25 years of a brokerage really going strongly after like somebody to because of this agreement. So now, with that being said though, I also don't want you to think what I'm saying right now is it's not really worth anything and don't worry about it. Nobody's gonna come after you. Like, because I'm not saying that either, but for whatever reason, it just doesn't seem to be as strongly enforced is, I guess, the main thing I want you to know with it is just, and so with that, let me take the reason I'm saying all this leads to this part. Because what I see happen though is agents, and especially more so newer agents than seasoned agents, will occasionally come to the brokerage and say, hey, I had this buyer who signed a buyer broker with me. And then I found out they went and bought a house and the agent is expecting the brokerage to say, okay, well, yeah, let's take them to court and let's go try to collect some commissions for you. And we will do that. Like, this is where I want to say, we will do that. If you have a client who signed this and you're saying, I feel like I'm entitled to the commission and I want to go to court to try to collect it, technically it's the brokerage that's going to have to do it because this contract belongs to the brokerage, not you as the agent, right? Same with the listing agreement. So when an agent comes though, usually what they're thinking is that the company should go hire an attorney and that the company should go after the commission and get the commission. And then once we get it, give it to you. So we will do that. So let me make sure I'm really clear on it. We will do that. The challenge with it though is the way that that works, and this is probably the reason why it doesn't get enforced very often, is, and I believe this is the way it typically works at other brokerages as well. I know of two that I have been with for the majority of my career, this is how it works. So my assumption is it's kind of this way everywhere. If you came to me and said, hey, Russ, I've got a buyer who signed this buyer broker. They've gone and bought another house and they didn't use me, but they signed this agreement, which says that they owe me a commission. I want to go after it. Great, we'll do that. The downside to that for you is the way that that gets to be paid for. So the way that we're going to pay for the attorney is based upon what your split with the company is. So meaning, if you are on a 70% split with the company, you get to pay 70% of the attorney's fees while we go try to collect it. And as soon as we typically explain that to an agent of, hey, so kind of it's this, you know, when you get a commission check, you get to keep 70 or 80% or whatever your split that you're on is, you end up getting to keep that. The downside is if you wanted to go hire an attorney to go after somebody, you get to pay whatever your split is of those attorney's fees, which I hope makes sense, because let's just say we were going after $100,000 commission and the company goes and spends a whole bunch of money with an attorney. And then once we collect, let's say the 100,000, now you're on a 70% split, you get 70,000 and the company gets 30. Like, I hope that makes sense to you, that if you're wanting to go after somebody and try to collect it, the way the attorney's fees get paid for is you get to pay whatever your split is of the attorney's fees. So in the event it doesn't get collected, then you're out that much. And typically, once we explain that to an agent is when they usually go, yeah, that's okay. I don't want to have to put the money up front. Okay. So but just know, you know, as the brokerage, like we will work with you on it. And if you said I wanted to go after it, we would say, okay, let's talk about it and let's see if it makes sense. And if we really want to go do it, and if you want to go do it, then we will go do it. All right. Did I beat that up enough? And we haven't even started yet. So, okay, good. So just know it is a legally binding agreement, but it's pretty rare. And in fact, actually, let me beat it up a little more. I'll tell you one other quick story, because the stories are the fun part anyway, right?
Yes.
So I mentioned to you guys that I am on the grievance committee at the Salt Lake Board, but have been on the professional standards, which is in the event you were to go and try to get a commission from somebody saying that, hey, they signed a buyer broker with me, or I think I'm the procuring cause, then we would go over to the board and you would go to a hearing on that. Well, in the hearing, a lot of times the things that agents misunderstand is, and I'm probably getting ahead of myself on this story a little bit, so I'll scroll down here to the brokerage fee section. But in this section here too of the brokerage fee, it says that in the event they purchase a property, that we would be owed a commission. So a lot of times agents will go to a hearing for this arbitration over the commission. And what they will do is they will go saying, okay, I feel like I'm entitled to the commission because they signed a buyer broker. Well, a buyer broker is part of the equation to who's going to get paid, but just keep in mind, procuring cause is separate from this. This agreement here, this contract that they're signing, that if they buy a house, they will pay you a commission, is not the same thing though as procuring cause. Procuring cause is who is the person who was the reason that this transaction happened. So when we're talking about procuring cause, that's what it is. Well, so I was sitting on a hearing there where an agent had gone and gotten this signed. And honestly, in my opinion, that agent had done nothing wrong, meaning they didn't abandon their client. They didn't do anything that way as in terms of that the client should have a reason necessarily to go somewhere else, but they did. They ended up buying a house. And as we sat on this hearing, I felt bad because I was like, I don't think the agent did anything wrong. I feel like I would have done the exact same thing that the agent had done, but that doesn't mean that she was the procuring cause to this commission. And so what happened is she just kept referring back to, but I had a buyer broker sign, but they signed a buyer broker with me. So they signed a buyer broker, they should owe the commission. And what we had to say to her, which is what I'm saying to you guys as well, is keep in mind that the fact of this buyer broker does say that they're agreeing they would pay you a commission if they buy a house. Now, the way that typically gets paid is from the seller, right? But that doesn't preclude somebody from saying, okay, we're going to go to court to collect this. And so my point in telling you all this story is we sat in this meeting and told this agent, you didn't do anything wrong. You really they do owe you a commission because of this legally binding agreement that they signed, and you should take them to court. And she said, well, I'm not going to do that. And I will say that's typically the answer is most brokerages, most companies are not going to go take somebody to court to enforce this contract. But it doesn't mean you can't, I guess. And so it doesn't mean that you should also treat it as like, well, then who cares? And it's not really worth anything. And what does it matter? But the main thing, I guess, I just want to make sure you guys know and remember and understand is there's a difference between procuring cause of like, who is the reason that the transaction happened and who should be paid the commission from the seller is different than they signed a buyer broker, which is saying they would owe you the money. So there is kind of this dissonance between kind of the procuring cause and no, they do owe you a commission and you could go to court to try to go collect it. Make sense?
So last thing is for what you're saying, Ross, there is some clients that, I mean, it looks like mostly buyers that could turn on like, okay, for some reason I went with this agent, even though I had an agreement with you, but this agent helped me find the house and all of that. So you're out of the deal. So that could happen.
That could happen. But like I said, that doesn't stop you from saying, hey, that you signed a buyer brokerage, their fee or commit buyer broker agreement. And as part of that, you owe us a commission and we're going to go take you to court to try to collect on that commission. But just because you have, so keep in mind this, the buyer broker is a piece of the puzzle as to who is the procuring cause. That's probably the best way for me to explain it is think of procuring cause as a puzzle.
Mhm.
And the buyer broker is a piece of the puzzle, but it's not the whole puzzle. It's only a piece of the puzzle.
And sorry, and then after all the lawyers' fees and all legal fees, really, is it worth it to even do that? How much you're going to be left with?
Right. Well, that's, yeah, we actually had talked about that right before you came in.
Yeah, I catch the.
Yeah,
the-
so you're right. That's part of the problem is by the time you pay all the fees and you get to pay them based on what your split is. So you get to pay typically the majority of those fees. Most agents go, yeah, I'm not going to do it. And here's the other side of it for me. So actually, let me, while we're on that, I'll give you another story. I had a referral. I don't even remember where this came from, but somebody had referred to me. Somebody in my SOI had referred to me, a guy that worked for Wendy's. He was a regional manager for Wendy's. And he had lived in Florida, but Wendy's was transferring him here to be over this region. And so I had met him. He came in here. We started showing houses. In the process of us looking at houses, we had seen this model home out in West Jordan. And they said, can we go stop in? And I said, yeah. So we stopped in. We go and look at the model home. The model home agent gives them the pricing, tells them everything. But they were saying, well, we want a 3-car garage. And the model home agent said, well, that's an additional, at that time, I think it was $5,000 or something. That'll be another $5,000 to get the 3rd-car garage. Well, that $5,000 then put them over what they could qualify for. And so we got done looking at it. We walked outside because we had already looked at some houses. That was kind of the last one of the day. And they said, well, we really like that. We're just going to have to see if we could come up with the additional $5,000 and we'll let you know. And I said, okay. So a few hours go by, they call me and they said, hey, we went to dinner and we talked about it. We really like that house. We actually went back to the model home and walked through it again. And while we were there, the model home agent said, you know, if you don't have an agent to represent you, then the builder gives you the 3rd-car garage for free. And so they said, you know we've signed a buyer broker with you. We know you've done all this work for us before we even came from Florida to here. We've done all this work for you, or you've done all this work for us. And we really want that house though. And I said, well, let me see what I can do. So let me try to earn my commission. So I called up the model home agent and I said, hey, first off, like, what are you doing? Like telling my clients that when you know I was with them? And she said, well, I just know they love the house and they can't afford it. But, you know, if they didn't have an agent, the builder gives it to them for free, the 3rd-car garage. And I said, well, I understand, but they've signed a buyer broker with me, and which is going to entail that they're going to have to pay. So, you know, I want you to go back to the builder and just say, I've got a buyer that wants to buy, but we're gonna have to pay the agent a commission and give him the 3-car garage. Oh yeah, he won't do that. And I said, well, then they won't be buying the house. And she said, okay, that's fine, whatever. So hung up, I called up my clients and I said, I can't get them to budge. Like, we'll see what they say, but they're not budging. And so they said, well, we don't know what to do because we also know, like, we don't want to cut you out. So here's what I did. And so this is typically my recommendation. And so based on the fact that most of the time people don't enforce this, it's pretty rare that a company is going to, but that doesn't mean we won't play poker with it and say that we're going to. Like, I do that a lot. But so here's what I did is I called them up and said, look, I don't want to stop you from getting the home you want. I know you guys want this house, but here's what I expect. I will release you from the buyer broker, but here's what I expect is I expect that what you will do is replace yourself. Meaning, I know you're from Florida, you don't know anybody really in Utah, but as you get to know your neighbors and get friends or whatever from school, your kids' schools or whatever, I would expect that you're going to refer people to me that I can then help either buy or sell their house. And that's how I'll get paid the commission. So in the long run, I will get paid if you'll be willing to refer me. Oh, sure, absolutely, we'll do that. Now, the truth is when I've done that and whenever I do that, I expect that they're never going to. Like, I just assume that just because not everybody is a referring type person. But here's what happened is a year went by. So they bought the house, they moved in, they got their 3-car garage. A year later, I get a phone call from the wife and I answer the phone and she says, Russ, this is so-and-so. Do you remember me? And inside I'm like, oh yeah, I remember.
I remember you.
But she said,
Very well.
here was the cool thing. She said, we have not forgotten what you've done for us. And so I just wanted you to know we were talking to our next door neighbor. He just got a job transfer and we told them they have to use you. They don't have a choice. They have to do it. And I was like, oh, that's awesome. Thanks. And so from that turned into a listing. And then a year later, she called and said, hey, guess what? Wendy's is moving us. We need to sell our house. We need you to come out and help us get our home sold. So here's my point in that is as much as we want to be like, no, we're enforcing this. I just have found in the event it makes sense. Like in that scenario, I was like, I'm not going to stop you guys from getting the house you want. Approach it that way. Just say to people, hey, I'm willing to let you out of this, but I do expect that you will replace yourself. Now, I don't always expect really that they're going to, but I want them to think that I'm expecting that and then release them from it. Because here's the thing. If I had said to them, sorry, you got to pay me this, they either wouldn't have bought that house and they would have got a different one, or they would have bought it and paid me. But a year later, when their neighbor had to sell, what have they called me?
No.
And then a year after that, when they had to move, what have they called me?
No.
Absolutely not. So I always just look at it as kind of just do the right thing. Use this from the standpoint of the buyer broker is worth only really what you and or the client decide that it's going to be worth. And so just kind of keep that in mind. All right. So with that, let's jump in. So going through talking about filling it out, obviously you're going to put in the buyer's name there. And again, what we talked about on the RevC workshop, I would just say again here is just as a reminder, the name you want to put in there is the name that they've applied for the loan. So whoever is going to be on the loan should be on here as well as on the buyer broker. So the same names that are on the loan are the same names that should be on the buyer broker. Okay. All right. Terms of the agreement. So that it's including blank buyer's agent, which is obviously going to be you. You're going to put your name that you're the buyer's agent, right? And that it's in effect until 5 p.m. on blank day of the month of the year. So what should we put in there? How much time should we put on?
Like 6 months or a year.
Okay, 6 months, year. So again, on this, I think we talked on the listing agreement of, I just said, usually for me, I'm going to do a minimum of 4 months with the listing agreement. on the buyer one, here's how I do it. What you guys have said is great. Like if you want to do 6 months, a year, whatever, that's all totally fine. How I do it though, is when I get to filling this out, I always ask the client, how long basically, when are you wanting to move into your house? Is basically what I'm asking. Okay, is I want to find out, when do you want to move in? Because that's how I'm going to decide what I'm going to put in here as how long this contract is. Because if they said to me, oh, I don't know, just sometime in the next year. If they tell you sometime in the next year, what are they really telling you? Yeah, there's not real motivation behind them buying, right? If they just, I don't know, just sometime in the next year, they're telling you there's not a lot of motivation, okay? So I love using this as a way to figure out what their motivation is by just asking, hey, so when are you wanting to move in? Now, go ahead.
So if you get that person that says, oh, I don't know, what are you doing there?
Well, so yeah, great question. If I got somebody who says, I don't know when I want to move
like
in.
you said, sometime in the next year.
Yeah, if they said sometime in the next year, I'm going to then ask more questions to find out like what's going on. And the other thing too that I like to do, and let me see, I don't know how if I can do this without my iPad. Let me see. No, I don't think I can. So I thought there was like a whiteboard, but I guess I can't get to it. So here's how I like to do it. Think of it this way. And so for you guys on Zoom, hopefully you can still kind of see me even though the lights are off and stuff. Imagine that I drew up here a T-square, okay? And on one side of this T-square, I'm going to put up here tour, or excuse me, I'm going to put up on this side few, and on this side of the T-square, I'm going to put many, okay? Few homes or many homes.
Okay.
So depending on where the person is, and this is the conversation I would have. So if let's assume you were the one saying, I don't know, sometime in the next year, I would say, great. And here's how I like to say it. If you have not ever used this script, make sure that you write this down and use this over and over and over again. And here's what it is. I work with my clients at their pace. Like you should be saying that to people that you are prospecting all the time. So the first thing I would say, which even if I've already said it 5 times to her, you know, before I got the appointment, but now that we're on an appointment, we're sitting down and we're talking about this. And I said, you know, how soon are you wanting to buy? And you said, I don't know, just sometime in the next year. I would just say, hey, Luz, that's awesome. And I work with my clients at their pace. So it really doesn't matter to me when you're going to buy, because I want to help you at whatever your pace is. Mm-hmm. Then I would take out this piece of paper, draw the T-square on it. I would write few on this side, many on this side. And then what would happen then is at that point, I would be explaining to you how I work. So I would be saying, you know, Luz, that's awesome. I work with my clients at their pace, but let me tell you how I work. And so I'm going to work with you at whatever pace it is you want to go in. But it sounds to me like you're not really real anxious to get a property right away. So tell me more about what it is you're wanting to accomplish. Then they're going to tell me, you know, whatever it is that they're wanting to do. You know, they're going to say, oh, well, you know, our kid's going to be graduating in the next year from high school. And at that point, the house is going to be too big and we don't need this big of a house. So we're going to go out and look for something else, like whatever. When they tell me that, once I know that they are not real serious about it, then I'm going to have this T-square where I've written few on one side and many on the other. And what then underneath that, so again, picture you've drawn this T-square. Above the line, I'm writing few and many. Then over here, under the few side, I'm going to write offers. And under the many side, I'm going to write tour. Does that make sense? So, and what I'm going to say to you is, so Luz, let me tell you how we want to work this. Is if you're not really ready to buy right now, then I'm going to work with you under this side where we're in what we call the tour phase. So remember, this side was the few offers. This side is many tour. And so what I'm going to say is the way we're going to do this is we're going to work under the tour side of this, where we're gonna look at a lot of houses. So the same thing, when you just have a client who wants to see, I need to see every house that's out there. Like, I want to make sure I get the best deal, so I need to go see everything that's out there on the market. Do the same thing, draw the T-square, few, many. And then what you say is, it sounds like you're in the phase of you want to look at many houses, and they're going to go, yeah, we want to see everything that's out there. Great. Then in that scenario, really how I like to look at it is that you're in the tour phase. We're still trying to figure out areas and what we want in a house. And during the tour phase, we're going to look at a lot of houses. Now, how many of you guys are excited to go show a lot of houses?
Well,
Really? Nobody?
Well, yeah,
I thought you guys got into this business because you liked looking at
I
houses.
swear that's what everybody says when I tell them, do you love looking at all the houses?
Yeah.
I tell them I'm a realtor, I'm like, it's fun, but oh my God, there's so much.
no, what the point,
Yeah.
the point is, Rose, that's not your only client. Hopefully you're working with sellers or other buyers, so you cannot spend so much time on that one that is thinking about it when somebody else might be ready to jump.
That's right. That's why I work with my clients at their pace. So if their pace is, we need to go look at every house in the market, I'm going to do that. Now, you guys excited for that?
No,
Me either. So guess you will be once I tell you this. Because here's how you do it, is when we're going to look at the many, when we're in the tour phase and we're going to look at a lot of houses, what that means is we're going to go out and look at a lot of houses, but we're not going to go inside of any of them. So when you're in the tour phase, what we will do is so for example, let me use it as an example of that. I'll use this same scenario. These clients that I told you that moved from Florida to here, somebody coming in town from out of state, the way that I like to work with them is the same thing. Is I want to tell them, look, there's two steps to us in you buying a house. Now, I don't do this with everybody, but an out-of-state buyer, this is how I do it, is there's two steps. The first step is the tour phase, where we're going to look at a lot of houses. The next phase is the offer phase, where we're not going to hardly look at any houses. We're going to look at very few houses. When we're in the tour phase, we're going to go out and we'll look at a ton of houses. Now, if you didn't go inside of a house, so let's say you had a client coming in from out of state, this Florida, they come into town and I put them in the car and I go, okay, we're going to go out and look at like 30, 40 houses today. Could I do that if we didn't go inside of any of them?
probably you could, you know, taking the time. to-
Because here's what we would do is I would have basically their basic criteria as far as the house that they want, where maybe they don't know area. And I would find a bunch of houses in different areas in the valley that I would say, we're going to go on a tour and we're going to drive up to the front of the house, park and go, here's this one. And this, you know, this is this style of home and it's got the beds and baths and all that kind of stuff that you like. Now, what do you think the chances though, when you pull up to one that's really nice, that they're going to be like, oh, could we go inside and just take a look at it?
Yeah, they want to.
So that's why before you do that, you explain to them this tour phase and the offer phase. And especially somebody coming from out of state, on day one is tour phase. We're not going inside of any houses. We're just going to go drive around and I'm going to pull up in front of them and go, okay, because part of what I'm wanting him to do is to get a feel for the area. Is this an area? So it's more so of, is this an area that you want? Here's the house that you could get in that area, kind of what the price is, all that kind of stuff. So somebody who's not ready to buy, because here's the thing. Let's say I have a client that says, yeah, we're going to want to sell and buy a new house in next summer after our kid's going to be a senior this next year and we're going to buy it next year, but we want to kind of start looking now. Are any of the houses that I would go look at them with today going to be on the market a year from now? I hope not. Like, we're in serious trouble as a real estate industry profession if they are, right? So to some extent, I'm going to explain that to them. Like, it doesn't make sense for us to go and look at houses on the inside if you're not in the offer phase. And because here's why. The worst thing you could do is you go show somebody a house that they fall in love with, that they aren't prepared to buy. From then on, every house they look at, they will be comparing to that one that got away. And I just explained to them, I don't want that to happen to you. And so as a result, until you're ready to consider making offers, we are going to go just drive by and take a look at them from the outside. And the good news is they can look at photos and stuff online, so they can really kind of tell. So you don't really need to go inside until they're ready to make offers.
So the tour side will be really, you are showing a neighborhood and a nice house or whatever house that it happens to be in that neighborhood.
Correct.
So you want it to be acquainted with the surroundings. Do you want to live in here? Does it look
That's-
good to you?
That's right. That's part of what we're doing with the tour phase. But also having them, because here's the other side of it that you got to remember is most of the time, the people decide on the house before they even walk inside. Meaning like when you pull up to the front of the house, most of the decision is already made. Walking in the house just confirms the decision.
So how so? Because of the neighborhood or how did that happen?
Just for, I don't know that I can tell you exactly why or how it happens.
Yeah.
But just like, I think about, one of the classes I teach you guys in is needs analysis of how to sit down and do a buyer interview to get the clients. Who's been through that? I know you have, Allison, but it's
Don't
been a
know
while.
the client or take the actual.
No, the class that
Oh.
I teach, the needs analysis. Oh, well, it's something to look forward to then. I was gonna test you on one of the things that I teach in there to see if you guys remember, but
Now you can just give us the answer. and then-
no, I'm not. You gotta come to the class. It's a commercial for the class. But when I first learned that process, the very first house I ever sold to somebody taking them through that needs analysis process, we pulled up to the front of the house and the husband looked at the wife and said, "This is it. This is the place." And they turned to me, and, "This is the house." And I was like, well, okay, well, let's go inside. Like, once they walk in, it's usually, yep, this is it. It's just a confirmation of it. So that's why, to me, like, ultimately, most of the time you could drive up to the front and just based on the neighborhood, the feel and stuff, people will look at it and be like, yeah, I'm not interested. They already can tell they're not interested before they even walk in the house, but they still want to. Make sense? Okay, so for me on this date here is I'm asking them, how soon do you want to be moved in? And then from there, I typically will just go 1 month beyond that. So if they said, well, we want to be in the next 2 months, then I'm probably going to do this for 3, maybe 4. But just that's how I usually think about doing it. Now, why? Why would I do it that way? And the reason is, what are the fiduciary duties that go along with this? Like, so now this is part of, remember I said to you guys throughout the classes, I will say, there's stuff that the Division of Real Estate wants me to make sure to cover with you guys. This is now one of those times. So what are your fiduciary duties?
Honesty,
Okay, good. Loyalty,
disclosure.
yes, disclosure, obedience, which that's the one I want to talk about for a minute. So well, let's hit the rest of them real quick. Loyalty, disclosure, obedience. Now you see why the division wants us to cover this.
We forget.
I know, that's why the division said we gotta
Yeah.
cover it. Give you a hint,
Yeah.
old car.
What?
Do you
Do I
remember that?
the demographics
Obedience,
of-
didn't they teach you that? The
Yes.
obedience,
We-
loyalty,
Oh.
disclosure, there's old. So now you need the CAR part of the fiduciary.
Compliance,
Compliance? No.
Confidentiality.
Confidentiality, so
um,
the A and the R are the hardest ones.
what's the second letter?
The second letter of the A is C, AC, and it's not acknowledged.
Why did that make it harder?
Where's the photographic memory now?
Accountability.
No.
Accountability?
There we go. So yeah, the account, you have to account for the monies and all those things, right? And then the R, which is really,
Respect.
no, not, you should respect your client, yes.
I was thinking that.
Yeah. It is RES,
Responsibility?
close, reasonable care.
Oh, yeah.
That's
And-
REAS.
Oh, you're right, yeah, sorry. Reasonable care and close, diligence, okay? So reasonable, what's reasonable care? We'll cover this later.
Oh,
All right,
man, that was rough.
I know. Well, now you know why the division says we gotta make you go through it again, right? Okay. So here's the thing. So now I said we were gonna talk about why, the reason I don't do this for 6 months or a year without first having talked to the client of, hey, when are you wanting to buy? Is because for me, one of our fiduciary duties that we have to the client is obedience. So what does that mean?
You need to do whatever it is that they want you to.
Okay, so anything that's legal, right, that they want that has to do with real estate, we would owe that to them. So if they called me and said, I want to go look at a house, now what?
You have to.
Or why wouldn't you want to?
Because they're not ready to buy for a year.
Oh.
Yeah, oh, yeah, that's gross,
I'm
right?
seeing my own mistakes.
Yes.
In my career
So
at this
that's
point.
why for me, here's the point of that. For me is just remember the length of time that you do this for is the length of time you have these fiduciary duties to the client. And so that's why for me, I'm saying like, I typically am just gonna start this by saying, when do you want to buy a property? When do you want to be moving into a property? And then I'm gonna decide what to put for my date based upon that.
So if they do say a year, what would you put?
Yeah, what do you do? when
Well,
they
so
say-
like I said, that's where if they said a year, I'm gonna first ask more questions to get more detail. I'm not saying I wouldn't do it for a year. I might do it for a
You
year.
want to make sure that that's actually.
But I want to make sure that's what they really mean. And I also want to give some pretty clear expectations around, and I didn't finish this, that tour and offer phase, those 2 phases is, I want to tell them like, we're going to stay in the tour phase until you're ready and to consider writing offers. As soon as you're ready to consider writing offers, we'll move. So the moment, and this is what I would be saying to the client, the moment you say to me, can we go look at the inside of the house? The question I'm going to immediately ask you after that is, are you ready to consider writing offers on the property if you like it? And if they say yes, great, let's go into the offer phase. But I tell them during the tour phase, we're going to see a lot of houses and we're going to talk about houses. When we're in the offer phase, we're going to talk about offers. We're going to talk about writing offers. And I just want to have that clear expectation to them. If they understand that, then yes, I might do it for a year.
And all of this is with the understanding that they've been pre-qualified, so you know, and they know how much of a house they can look at.
Correct.
So quick question, is your motivation behind this kind of like approach? Is it more to like motivate them and kind of like light a fire under them, and make them realize that they can't look at homes until they're ready to buy? Or is it like for the sake of your own time, or do you feel like?
Yes.
Yeah,
The answer is yes.
Okay.
that's my takeaway. I love it. I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's like, George said in our last, what was it, like our last summit meeting, like, be protective of your time and use your time. Like, it was money-making time. Like, your time is really all we have.
Right.
And so go use it wisely to make money.
Yeah. And so yes, for me, it's just to figure out like, how serious are they? And if they're not real serious, I want to make sure they understand, like, I'm probably, I'm going to treat you differently when you're in the tour phase than when you're in the offer. When they're in the offer phase, like I'll drop anything, I'll go do, like, we're ready to write offers. But if it's, oh, we just saw this cute house and we want to go take a look at it and get some decorating ideas. Yeah, no.
That's
Right.
They probably like respect you more too when you say.
Yeah, well, and here's
And
the
it weeds
thing.
out.
You have to approach this, and please hear this piece of it. You have to approach this business from the mindset of abundance. There are plenty of clients out there and you can find them and you can get the ones who want to work the way you want to work. But if you run around chasing after the people, trying to force them to be your client, is where you can get frustrated and annoyed and all those kinds of things. So don't take a scarcity mindset of, oh, there's only a limited number of clients and I better take this one because I got them. Instead, it's like, no, have I shared you guys with, I told you guys the story. Did I tell you guys the story about the guy that had this $1 million buyer that I eventually told the agent, quit working with this guy because he's never going to buy? Did I tell you guys that story?
You've told me.
Okay.
No.
All right, let me tell you. So, okay. So I had this guy that in a class like this was always talking about this $1 million buyer that he had that wanted to buy up in Park City, Jeremy Ranch. And eventually he like talked about him so much in class and stuff that eventually I was like, I don't want to hear about this guy ever again in this class because he's not going to buy. You need to quit working with him. And he was like, I'm not going to quit working with him. And I said, then that's fine, but we don't want to hear about it anymore because he's not going to buy. So it was interesting though, because a few months went by and then in one of the classes, the guy said, hey, can I tell you a story about this guy? And I was like, no, I don't want to hear about him anymore. Remember? And he says to me, no, you're going to want to hear this one. And I said, all right, go ahead, tell the story. And at that time, the company I was with had an office on Main Street in Park City. So along Main Street in Park City, it's not uncommon that in the winter, people that are just in town would see a real estate office and then come poke their head in and go, hey, we enjoyed skiing here. We want to buy a place. Can you help us? So he was working out of that office, and up there they would have this thing that we don't really do anymore, but it's called floor time, where basically it's just whoever was there at the office, if somebody walked in and said, we want to buy a house, it was your turn, you know, whatever that block, and it was usually in 2-hour blocks. During that 2-hour block, anybody that came in or called in was yours. So he was on floor time, and this guy calls him up and says, hey, I found this property I want to go see in Jeremy Ranch for $1.2 million. Will you go show it to me? And he's like, yes, same thing. He's going to drop and run to go do it. So he goes and finds this other agent in the office. So we'll just use Allison as the other agent. And he says to her, hey, Allison, I got a buyer that wants to go look at a house. I'm on floor time though. Are you going to be here for a little while?
Sure.
Okay, will you just take my floor time?
Yeah.
Okay, he jumps in the car. He drives off to go show this guy a property in Jeremy Ranch. Well, while he's gone, somebody just walks into the office, and Allison now gets to help them. And they go, hey, we were just skiing and we saw this condo that had this ski in, ski out access, and we want to buy it. Can you help us? And Allison, of course, says,
Yeah.
sure. So she goes to the MLS, looks it up. Guess how much it's this townhouse or condo or whatever it was?
2.5 million.
1.2 million.
Oh.
1.2 million. And she gets out a contract, writes it, cash offer, gonna close in 2 weeks or something really quick, and deal's done. Meanwhile, this guy's over showing Jeremy Ranch, comes back to the office, and Allison, what are you gonna do when I walk back in the office after I've said, hey, thanks, you know? Yeah, she's like, oh, look at what happened while you were gone. And he was like, are you serious? And she's like, yeah, and it closed. So the point was, in the class, the guy was like, I get it. Because what that is that's your opportunity cost, which is kind of what Chad was talking about, is you only have your time. And so everything that you do has a cost to it. There is an opportunity cost. And the moment that he left to go show that property, he gave up the opportunity of capturing that real client. And so for me, that's my message in this of, I'm going to work with people differently, which is kind of what Chad was referring to, is I'm going to work with them differently if they're not prepared, if they're not going to be in the offer stage. I'm not saying I won't work with them, because remember, I work with my clients at their pace, but I'm going to work with them differently than somebody who's like ready to go. If they're not ready to go, like, then, hey, this is how I work. And I'm not going to change that based on even the dollar amount. See, the reason this agent wouldn't get rid of the buyer was because, well, it's going to be $1 million buyer. Well, so relative to today's market, it probably, like, those same houses he was showing for $1 million are probably 2.5 now, probably. So it'd be no different than you guys getting a client that's like, hey, I want to buy a $2.5 million house, but you know, I don't know when, and we'll see. And you know, if the right thing comes along, we'll do it. We're going to be like, oh, I'll do it then, whatever, I'll chase around.
The other thing to add to that, if you guys are working with buyers that are in that price range, ask for proof of funds, because 90% of the properties that you're going to see are going to ask for that in advance before you even see it now.
Yeah.
At least in the last like 2-3 years that I've seen that.
No, it's
They
always,
ask for it. If
yeah.
it's at that price point, they want to see proof of funds, either a letter, something that's in the account, like the listing agent wants to see it.
so, yeah, so that's the whole point of this, is like, I'm going to be careful with how I'm going to work with it. So I'm not saying I wouldn't sign a buyer broker with them for a year. I just want to make sure that there's a clear understanding of like how we're gonna work, because again, you have that fiduciary duty of obedience, and I'm not gonna just drop everything to go out and run and show properties to somebody who's like not buying for a year from now.
I changed section 1. I just put it to terms of my time.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, so he crossed out on here
That's how I'm-
agreement
Right,
and changed it
that's
to
how I'm
terms.
getting to think of it now, is
Oh, I like that.
terms of my time.
I like that. Thanks. All right. Then the next piece of this is that we are, and I think, so as I'm thinking about this, you're gonna have to tell me if
There's a
this.
new one, I was gonna let you know, yeah, this is the old.
Okay,
one.
good.
Don't use this one, you guys.
Well, and you know what the best part about it is? I'm the reason there
Yeah,
is a
this
new
an
one.
old version.
But this is not.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I'm the
so
reason
up
who
at
got it.
In terms of agreement, you now can enter in the effective date and the expiration date. Because on this one, I don't know if you guys are, but I'll tell you, so in section 15, it will state is the last signature. So it's really confusing, like if they signed this 3 months ago, but you haven't signed it yet, it hasn't like gone into effect yet.
Yeah.
So that's why this one is not very good.
So-
And there's an ERS is the same thing, there's old versions of both.
Yeah,
So on the new one, you can put in the start date and the end date right there in section
So
1.
this one is also.
Yes.
yeah.
She
So
is a
you
great
changed that?
TC, just. so
Well,
you know.
I got it changed. After one of the classes, in fact, the last time I taught this,
It's
we were
just that
talking
part.
about a
Everything
few
else is the
things that I
same.
went back then and said, we need to get this changed, and then we did.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
So,
it's really good. It's a lot better.
So if you want to remember, you see what it was.
That's right.
Right over there, you guys can come and ask us.
Right over there.
Yeah.
Where I go every time.
Oh, yeah, I do. Like, that's
What was she asking for?
my card.
Oh,
It's all right, Des. Go grab it.
I thought you said hug.
hug. Give me a
You
hug.
can do whatever.
Come give me a hug.
Oh,
All right.
that's awesome.
Sorry.
You're all, no, you're great. So this has been changed a little bit on a few things, and so it's funny, because after the last time I taught this class, I went to Rob and was like, we gotta change some of this stuff. And then he changed it, and then for whatever reason, I didn't change it here, so I'll get that changed. But so the next piece of this is in blank county, and I think, so correct me if I'm wrong, because I asked him to change it to where this would say county or counties.
Yeah, I think it is.
Yeah, it has like in parentheses IES so that you can list multiple, because the way this one is worded is like you could put one county,
Mhm.
but maybe the client is looking at potentially two counties or
It's
whatever.
interesting that they have that, it's not wording like that at all. It's just like.
Well, actually, this is a Everest contract.
Oh.
Most brokerages, I don't think have that either. It's
Yeah.
just, it's for
pretty much like
everywhere.
you, me working together, cool.
Yes,
Well, that's what a
exactly.
lot of agents do, they write any there, that's the loophole that they do.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah, and it's
any
fine.
and all.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's fine.
and that would be fine to do any and all counties, Utah, that would
Yeah.
work, so, okay. Or located at, so now here's the next piece, and this is why I do like our contract. Occasionally, you will have a client who is hesitant to sign a buyer broker because they're like, well, I just barely met you, or I haven't even met you yet. You're asking them over the phone when you've set an appointment, hey, when we get together, I'm gonna ask you to sign an agreement. Like, if you come across somebody who's hesitant to sign, so let me back up even for a minute. On this effective date, or the expiration date, on that as well, keep in mind, I'm not opposed to doing it for 2 weeks. Like, I'll do it that short, now, never on the listing side, but on the buyer side, I would do this and say, hey, great, if they're hesitant, I might say, great, let's just sign it for 2 weeks or even a week to do it as a trial run. You can see how I do it, but have a standard. You need to have a standard of, I won't show people without having signed a buyer broker. Now, most agents don't do that. I get it. And in fact, when I teach this down in California to our California agents, they're even more averse to having a client sign a buyer broker than we are here for some reason. But to me, just kind of have that as a standard of, I'm not going to show property unless they're going to sign.
I wonder if it's because there's so many agents down there that they don't want to like scare someone off.
That is 100% what it is. They're afraid they're going to scare people off, which leads then to this section B here. I keep forgetting about our friends on Zoom, that they can't see me pointing on the screen. But so this section B here, located at,
So, sorry,
no, you're good.
somebody might be scared, worried about scaring people off, but then you're opening yourself to to be working for free too.
Right.
And me
Right.
wasting your time.
Right, well, again, to me, it's because we have this scarcity mindset. We have this mindset that, well, I'm gonna scare them off, and then. To me, it's like, if you work from abundance, it's like, if they're not willing to sign it, I'll find somebody else that will.
Yeah.
So, but here's the other side of it for me of why I think this is great, is because the other option we have is located at. To where if somebody's wanting to go see a property and they're hesitant to sign this, the first thing I'm gonna do is try to get it signed for, a few months. If that won't work, then I might try, well, let's do it for a couple of weeks then, just to try each other out. And then if after that, you don't want to work with me or I don't want to work with you, we don't have to. But even the event that they were hesitant of that, then we have this option of, well, then will you at least sign it for the properties I'm going to be going to show you? Now, if somebody's not willing to sign it for at least the properties located at, what would be, why would they not be willing to do that?
They are committed somewhere else.
They're probably gonna go buy with someone else is really what it ends up being, right? And so for me, that's why I'm saying like the awesome thing about this is it provides you with the opportunity to know right up front, are they gonna be willing to work with you? Because if they're not even willing to sign it if I was gonna go show them 2 or 3 houses to sign it just for those 2 or 3 houses, like you probably don't want to go show them the house. Because what they're telling you is, I'm gonna have you show it to me and then I'm gonna go buy it with somebody else. Make sense? Okay,
So how would you go about filling out this contract with just the houses I show you?
oh,
The
good
houses
question.
I bring to you.
Yeah, so I wouldn't do it as, I would do it differently. So I guess what I'm saying, from what you're asking, I wouldn't
Right.
do it that way. Instead, what I would say is let's sign it just for these 3 houses that we're gonna go look at. And then after that, I'm gonna want them to commit
Kind of
to
reassess to a time.
a time frame. Yeah,
Gotcha.
thank you. So I would use it as kind of a dating kind of a thing. Hey, let's
Right.
date before we get married kind of a thing. But I at least want to know. Just trying to think of something funny I could say there. It might not be appropriate, so I probably better
Never
not.
mind.
Yeah, I at least want to know you're gonna give me a kiss at the end of the date. If not get married necessarily.
Or a Vegas. marriage.
Yeah, something. Yeah, Vegas marriage. Yeah, where. Yeah, that. I'm getting all kinds of good stuff from you, Chad. This is awesome.
all of a sudden.
What?
You are getting pink all of a sudden.
Oh, am I? It's too dark. You can't really see. Okay, so yeah, does that make sense? All right, we've been, what time is it? Oh, we've only been an hour on section 1.
Yeah,
Typical conference.
Like I told you before, good news is I'll get us done. All right. Next, brokerage fee. We've kind of already hit on that, but just to make sure you guys know. So this is saying that the brokerage fee will be 3% plus, and this one that I use just has $4.95. I'm assuming the new one probably just has a blank line.
Yep, they'll come blank, you can fill them out.
Yeah, so you can put it in. But here's the thing. So here's my concern with having the blank line is don't just accept like, oh, it'll, the house that they're gonna write an offer on is 2%. So I'm gonna write 2% in there. Like, have a standard. Like, what are you worth? Meaning, like, for me personally, like, I'm putting 3% plus a $4.95. So, because I feel like that's what I'm worth. And so what do I do though, if I come across a property on the MLS that is 2%? So yeah, first thing I'm gonna do is try to negotiate to get 3%. That's the first thing I'm gonna do. In the event I can't get it and the client wants the house and I'm not gonna charge the client, then you can do an addendum to this, which I think you have to do, right? Marissa, if they did this at 3%, but then they end up getting a home that on the MLS is only offering 2
No,
or whatever.
you actually don't, but
Okay.
what you do wanna do, if you're using us, you wanna make sure that's very clear, and then we confirm it with the title company, that's the big thing.
Okay, cool.
If you
Because
don't
if
do
not,
the addendum,
'Cause
don't they charge you that 6%?
That's what I was
franchise
just-
fee on the whole price?
No, as long as you confirm it with title, they'll just do,
Well, but I was gonna say, I think we need to verify on that because my
On this?
understanding, yeah,
on a buyer broker or ERS, because that's 2 different stories.
Barbara,
buy
Yeah, no,
because,
if you put 2.5 and you have a 3, and you're only collecting the 2.5 VAC and not the other 0.5, you do not need
Okay.
We even
'Cause-
actually just talked to Rob about this.
Okay,
He
good.
said
Well,
no.
because at one point, though, like what Allison's saying is true, is at one point, Century 21 came through and did an audit,
Mhm.
and what they found was
our
that we,
franchise fees.
that they were only getting franchise fees on the money we collected, not what the contract said, and they wanted our contract to actually match
Oh, yeah,
what it
no.
was, so
That's
then what Allison's saying is they, for a while, maybe they've quit doing it, but for a while, they were coming and saying, you owe us the difference of the franchise fee at what it would have been.
Yeah,
at
because
3%.
as TCs, we agreed, we're like, if whatever you're getting, we want to see it in black and white, you know, when everyone
Yeah.
signs on it. But we asked Rob and he said, no, as long as it's communicated with title, we don't have to.
Okay.
addend it.
But that's good to know, I'll ask him again, because I know there was a time.
Yeah.
Communicated with title when the check comes over? Like.
No, you want
No,
it, you get your
beforehand.
CD, on your
Before,
CD,
yeah.
you need to look at your CD. and
Wait, your
verify
CD
it.
has to be voted to be paid, right?
Well, you get the CD before it closes, like
Oh, yeah,
typically a
to
week or two
review.
before, yeah, and then you get an email and you're like, okay, we're only doing 2.5, not 3, and I just want to make sure it's reflected.
That's good to know, because I have been teaching that you have to do an addendum to this.
I asked,
Because,
because that's what we wanted to do too, you know, but Rob's
Well,
like, no, it's not.
I'll have to
necessary.
ask Rob why it changed,
Yeah.
then, or maybe it was just Matt that wanted it, maybe it
No, it
really
was with
wasn't.
Rob too,
Oh,
it's both of them, I talked to both of them about it.
okay, good to know. All right, next. Well, any questions? I know I'm gonna pick up the pace, but at the same time, want to answer your questions. So if you have any, let me know.
Just the franchise fee. Theory there. So that 495 is the franchise fee, right? Or not?
No,
Just what you're collecting, it's
Nope.
really only 295.
yeah,
So,
the franchise fee is gonna come off of the 3%.
all right, so if I collect 2%, then that's going to be 2%. or
But yeah, it
what?
would be, the franchise fee is gonna be 6% of the 2%.
6% of the 2%.
Yep. Whatever you're collecting, if the MLS is offering 2.5, the franchise fee will be 6% of the 2.5. If you're
Okay.
getting 3, it's 6% of the 3%.
Okay, so it doesn't matter the amount, the whatever it is that I'm making is 6%.
Franchise fee is 6%, correct. Okay, next, protection period. This is, we already talked about this on the listing one, so I'll just say the same thing here. Put whatever you want in there, just don't put 0 is my recommendation. I mean, you could put 0 if you want, but I would recommend you don't put 0. Because this is the story I told you guys about, that the agent showed houses, the people then went and bought it. And they were like, hey, I showed them the house, but they bought it after the contract had expired within like a few days. But they had put 0 on there. They had no leg to stand on. So I would at least do 1 month, you know, if not 2 or 3, whatever, you know, however you want to do it. Just don't put 0. My recommendation. All right. Buyer representations and disclosures, this section, and like I say, anything we're not filling out, I'm gonna kind of pick up the pace on it, but if you have questions, stop me, because I don't want, do not leave here feeling like, oh, Russ didn't want us to ask questions. Buyer representations and disclosures, on this one is where I'm telling them that basically what's happening is this, and this is crucial, this first part of this. So I actually am gonna read you the first sentence here. The buyer warrants that the buyer has not entered into any other exclusive buyer or broker agreement with any other brokerage that is still in force and effect. The buyer will, in all communications with other real estate agents, notify the agents in advance that the buyer has entered into this exclusive buyer broker agreement. So part of why I read that to you is I want to make sure you guys know, train your clients, get your clients trained that once they've signed this, that it's their responsibility to tell every agent that they come in contact with that they've signed this with you. So if they walk into an open house, they should immediately be saying, I've signed a buyer broker agreement with Chad. I've signed a buyer broker agreement, you know, whatever. Make sense? Because remember I said to you guys the other day that at the board, they teach you, you need to ask if they're working with an agent. And that our code of ethics really says you only need to ask that before providing a substantive service. Well, part of, for me, why I feel like is technically, once somebody has signed this, they are signing it, agreeing that they will tell every agent they come in contact with. So that's part of why I feel like I don't need to ask until I'm about to provide a substantive service, because they, if they have signed this, should be telling me on their own. Okay. All right,
Can I play
Agency
devil's advocate a little bit?
what's that?
Can I play devil's advocate a little bit?
Oh, yes, go ahead. Sorry, let me turn it.
So I feel like that, like, so you were saying a couple of weeks ago that if someone were to come in and say, hey, can I write an offer, you would, right?
Yes.
So I guess why is it really even necessary then? In
Why-
order, because if that were to happen, I feel like any agent would really just write him an offer and go for it. And even because we've talked about how it's not really worth it to go to mediation or go, pay lawyers fees to kind of get the commissions, etc. I guess, is there like, what's the benefit, I guess?
Of what?
I guess so I don't want to say of the buyer broker agreement per se, because it feels like it's kind of a blanket that kind of protects you, but in all reality, it's just kind of like a dog eat dog type of.
Got you. Okay, yes, I understand what you're saying. So, yeah, in some ways it is that way. It is kind of a dog eat dog kind of a thing. But for me, I guess here's the best way I can explain it to you is I think about this buyer broker agreement as it's going to keep honest people honest. Meaning, and really, that's why I always start the class with, this is a legally binding agreement. It is. And so it is something that if you went to court, they would look at it from the standpoint of this is a legally binding agreement, even though it's not really enforced as much in the community, doesn't change the fact that it is a legally binding agreement. And so for me, I like to think of it as, to some extent, it's to have the client at least feel the commitment to me, even though it happens all the time where people have signed it and then kind of move on. But usually the only thing that's going to make it okay for them to move on is if you have abandoned them or they become estranged. Thanks to Christian, we got that term. So does that help, Blake, or no?
Yeah, like it does, because so if I were buying and like an agent was helping me, I would feel like maybe ethically obligated. So that it does help in that regard, where it kind of keeps the honest buyer honest.
Yep.
When I think of it from an agent's.
We lost you. I don't know if you got muted or what. You still there? We lost you, Blake. I don't know if you can hear me. Maybe you got booted off. Let me see. No, shows you're still there. We can't hear you though. I don't know what happened. Hope he didn't pass out.
He was too disappointed.
I had that come up in a listing that I had where I was doing an open house and had some unrepresented buyers come through and they wanted to write an offer. And they were looking into writing an offer. Basically, I just, kind of said, have you signed agency agreement with the other agent? And the agent said, only in Utah County. I said, well, I'd be happy to work with you in Davis County, because that's where I live, that's where the listing was. And I just made it very clear, like, I want to be honest, we have a code of ethics that we live by. I don't want to take the risk of losing my license. And actually, to that buyer, the buyer actually really appreciated that, like, my honesty and just,
Yeah.
hey, like, that's, that makes me feel good that you're being honest and that you don't want to step on anyone's toes.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that's great.
But the fact that you say in Utah County, you're in Davis County, within the N18 apply, like, it doesn't matter what county they are working with?
Yeah, if you had put in there any county, then it wouldn't have mattered. But
They
But
were-
most people put in
Salt Lake County.
Salt Lake
Davis
County or Utah County
Utah
or
County.
Davis County. Yeah.
So I was like,
Not
well,
different
then
agents.
I'll work with you in Davis County.
Yeah.
Great.
Well, so seems to me that all of these things, you are trying to keep it as honest and legal as possible, but there's some that there is so much that is going to cover and so long that will go. Depending on the circumstances.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, just, that's the thing, is there are gonna be exceptions and things that come along, so. Christian?
Oh, I was just saying that I've seen that the property address very specifically is common amongst, working with investors.
Yeah, yeah, for
Because
investors.
they're
for
gonna
sure.
work with like 5 other realtors. If you're procuring them essentially one property to,
Yeah.
to act as their buyer agent, you're just being their agent essentially for that singular instance.
Yeah.
So it's just.
Yeah, on a investor, it's not uncommon to do it by address. Okay,
So I'm not like,
Okay.
I'm never trying to rope them into like anything. It's just like, yeah, here's just for the one property.
Right.
like,
Yep.
we're done.
yeah, that works. All right, well, I don't know what happened with Blake. Hopefully you got what you needed, if you can hear us.
I'm back. My
Okay.
like the internet down here in St. George went out, so I had to use my personal hotspot.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you got cut off partway through, so I didn't know if you still, or if you're good or had more questions on it.
Yeah, we can move on. I understand what you're saying.
Cool, okay. All right, so the next section here is the buyer's, or excuse me, agency relationship, and it goes through the duties of a buyer's agent and then explains limited agency. So for me, with that, with the client, I'm just explaining to them, I'm on your side. So similar to what we talked about on the exclusive right to sell, I'm on your side, I'm negotiating on your behalf, like all of those fiduciary duties, the loyalty, all those things apply to where I'm trying to help them out. And then if you have no listings, then the only thing I would probably say about the limited agency is just in the event you're gonna buy a property that is listed by Century 21 Everest, then in that case, I'll still represent you as the agent. The other agent would represent the seller, but our brokerage would have to be neutral. And that's pretty much what I'm gonna say about it. Good, all right. Professional advice. When I get to this section, here's how I handle this. When I get to this section with the client is I tell them what this section says is don't trust anything I tell you. And they usually laugh when I say that, of like, what? And then I just explain to them, basically what it means is I'm trained in the marketing of real estate. I'm not a property inspector. I'm not an accountant. I'm not an attorney, all of those things. So just know you're going to want to ask me questions about tax or survey questions, all those kinds of things. I'm not going to be the right one. Don't rely on what I tell you. Okay. Now, then when we go out and look at a property, what's going to happen is we go out and look at a house and we're out at the house and they'll say to me, hey, so is this the property line right here? Is this where the property line is? Yeah.
Maybe, sure.
Well, and so then what I always say is, well, remember when I had you sign that form and I told you, don't trust anything I tell you? And then they usually go, oh yeah, that's right. And I say, this is one of those scenarios of like, I can tell you where it looks like it is, but don't rely on
Call your best
me.
accountant.
Yeah, call somebody else that can do the survey or whatever. All right, so that's the other thing that I do when I get to this is I will explain to them the buyer due diligence form as well. Okay, so which we'll get to in just a second. All right, dispute resolution. When I get to this one, I just tell them in the event there is a dispute between you and us, meaning Everest, the company, we will go to mediation before going to court, is what that one says, okay? Then section 8 says that any attorney's fees would be covered by whoever wins the lawsuit if you ended up in court, okay? Buyer authorizations, I just am telling them they're giving us the authorization to disclose the purchase price to the property. They're also giving us permission to stay in touch with them about real estate. So this buyer authorization gives us permission to put the purchase price on the MLS. It also gives us the right to talk to them about, it gets us around the do not call list, basically, if they were on that. Make sense? All right. Section 10 is there either are or are not attachments. So if you're going to have an addendum to this, you would put check the R box. So that scenario would be if you were gonna go show them 4 or 5 houses, you're not gonna fit that all on that one line. So on that located in, I might put see addendum for property addresses. And then I would check there are additional terms and list them on there. Okay. All right, equal housing opportunity. We're not even close to it.
No.
You're welcome to still, I'm going as fast as I can,
Like 15 more minutes?
probably. All right, equal housing opportunity is, says that we're gonna follow all of the laws regarding fair housing, basically, right? Electronic transmissions and counterparts, we talked about that on the listing paperwork. This is the same thing here. We're agreeing that we can do things electronically and signatures are gonna be okay. The due on sale clause, when I get to this, I just always explain to the client that what this is saying is that there are certain transactions. So really, at the end of the day, I'm just finding out from them, if they're wanting to do seller finance or lease option, then we're gonna have a discussion about due on sale. If they're just getting a loan or paying cash, I just tell them this clause really isn't even gonna play into us purchasing a house. But I may just tell them that it basically just says, if you violate what the trust deed on the property, the mortgage company can call that note due and payable. So. Section 14 says this is the entire agreement, that there's everything that we've agreed upon is in writing, part of this agreement. And that the effective date, so this is where we were saying this has
Yeah.
changed, so now
Yeah,
it's up
that's
at the
not
top.
on there. Yep.
And then they're gonna sign it, you're gonna sign it, and before we go to the next page though, do you have a real estate need or a property to sell outside of our current market area? And they're going to, you just wanna make sure to talk to them to see if you can send an outgoing referral. Okay? All right. The due diligence checklist. Okay, so remember I said there on section 9, when I get to that section, that I always tell them that what that section says, don't trust anything that I tell you. At that point is when I will bring up this due diligence form and talk to the client about it. So to fill it out, you're gonna put in Everest here, your name is the agent, their names is the buyer. And then again, this notice from the company is buyer is advised that we're trained in the marketing of real estate. Neither the company nor its agents are trained or licensed to provide the buyers with professional advice regarding blah, blah, blah. And then I just say to them, when I'm explaining this form, what I typically tell them on this form is that these items in bold here are just some examples of some of the things that they might want to consider in buying the property. So these are just some of the things that, and how I usually say it to them is, if you as a buyer are concerned about building codes or zoning compliance, then you should check it out. If you're worried about renting the property, you should find out the details on that. So all of these kinds of things, I just always tell the buyer is, this is the kind of stuff you might want to look into as you're buying this property. And then for you guys, the way that I always like to say it is, think about it this, the buyer remember on the seller paperwork that I had told you that the seller disclosures are the seller's get out of jail free thing, like to keep them out of court. The buyer due diligence checklist is your get out of jail free thing. This is kind of what, in the event you end up in court with a client, more than likely this form and the next one we're going to go over are the ones that we as a company are going to rely on if they're trying to say, well, I bought the property because they told me the property line was right there or whatever. Like if they're trying to say we gave them bad information, we're going to go back to this of saying, remember, we said, don't rely on us for making these decisions. Okay. All right. So as we go through that, they're gonna initial all of those things and sign it. So each of these pages all the way down, right? All right, the next form. The next one is the receipt and acknowledgement of buyer due diligence, which I know,
It's the same.
but I was just thinking, what we need to get fixed on this one is the logo.
Yeah.
Well, that might not be the same. It's probably updated.
Oh, I don't know
I
if
saw it
it
the
is.
other day, it's changed.
Oh, is it
No.
updated? Okay,
I'm
good.
pretty
So
sure
I
it's
just,
done.
Yeah.
I gotta go through and
I'm pretty
update.
sure it's something that it was changed. My
Alright.
client was asking me about it and I go, oh, yeah, it's, they saw at the top, it was that, yeah, the different one.
All right. I'll go through and fix these. All right, so this one though. So now here's how I think about this one. This is the receipt and acknowledgement of buyer due diligence. This one is a form that I don't know of any other brokerage that uses a receipt and acknowledgement of the due diligence. There might be others, but I don't know of any others besides us that do it. And so think of this one as, this one is just an extra layer of protection for you. Meaning that, because here's what's gonna happen on this last form. In the event you end up in court and we try to rely on this one, what the buyer is gonna say, well, you guys tell me, what do you think the buyer is gonna say if an attorney were to say, well, did you sign this form that says you were trained in the marketing of real estate and you should check out all that stuff? What is the buyer gonna say?
They didn't explain it.
That's right.
No, probably I signed it. I didn't know what it meant though.
Yeah, they're gonna go, well, they just sent it to me and I just clicked through and signed everything and I didn't, they didn't explain it to me that what it was, okay? Which, so for me, that is a good point for you guys to remember is when you're having people sign and stuff through .loop, make sure that you are doing that extra little bit of protection of like, here's this forms we talked about that I explained to you, something along those lines. So that if we did end up in court, we could have that as a statement of, hey, here's the forms we talked about and for you to sign. Because that way we would have that to say, well, look, it says right there, we talked about it. But this is going to give you that extra layer of protection because this is a receipt and acknowledgement where what we're going to have the clients do then is initial next to each one of these. Now, here's what I like about this. This is just and I don't know if this really would stand up or not, but to me, I feel like it would, is if I go back to this other form here and we were to go find the property inspection section that you can have check out the physical condition, like they're probably not gonna read that. But when you get down to this form, there's a pretty good chance they're like almost as you're initially, you could read, I hereby understand and acknowledge of any rights to have a home inspection performed by a professional home inspector. I mean, like, to me, I just kind of feel like the fact that we're having an initial next to that, somebody trying to say, well, I didn't know that I could get a home inspection done. Well, not only did you sign the buyer due diligence, you initialed right next to home inspection. And you initialed next to home warranty, you initialed next to mold inspection, you initialed next to radon gas. Like all of these things, they're initially next to. I feel like that's just going to give you that extra layer of protection that they can't say, well, I didn't know. Does that make sense? So on this one, you'll notice it is has a spot for the property address. So the due diligence, you could have them sign at the time that they're doing the buyer broker. But I would recommend to you that, well, I guess, do we have to have it signed for
I was
every?
gonna say, I've never even seen those lines there. I don't
Okay,
think we pay attention to that.
Okay. I would still recommend
The
though,
property address. and
the
address.
address right here that I've got highlighted.
Yeah.
I would
I've never seen it
recommend
pulled out.
that you do this particular form every time you write an offer on a property. So due diligence, do one time, but if you write offers on multiple properties, I would have them, and again, for me, it's just that extra layer of protection for you to be able to say, no, look, I had them sign it 3 different times and we put the property ad, like, they're gonna have a hard time saying, I didn't know if you did something like this. Okay? All right, and then the buyer's gonna sign there. Next is confirmation of earnest money receipt. So this one is gonna be filled out and you're gonna put in the buyer's name, the buyer's agent, the buyer's brokerage, the seller's agent, the seller's brokerage, the property address. And then down here is the confirmation of earnest money receipt, where what's gonna happen is you're gonna put in this reference date here. Remember, we talked about that on the rep sheet. So I'm gonna put in whatever the offer reference date was between the buyer and the seller regarding the above property, and confirms that on blank, the buyer's brokerage received the earnest money. So you're gonna put in the date you got the earnest money, check the box for how they gave it to you, and then sign. Okay. So, and then you should send a copy of that over to the listing agent once we've received the earnest money, so they know, okay, we got it. All right, limited agency consent. So on this one, again, when are you gonna use it? If you're representing both the buyer and the seller, or,
The brokerages.
and so what if it was Century 21 Harmon that had the hot property listed and you were writing the offer? Do we need it? I heard one no.
But what it was, what?
I see some head shaking.
What's Century 21 Harmon?
There's a different
It's like a
company.
different
Oh,
franchise.
a branch.
So yeah, so they're in Provo, there is a Century 21 franchise. We're Century 21 Everest, they are Century 21 Harmon. Up in Ogden, there's one, what's it called?
Gage.
Gage. Yeah, I should ask you, yeah. Century 21 Gage 4 or something, right? Yeah. So if I were writing an offer representing the buyer on one, either Century 21 Harmon or Gage, do I need this form? Correct. Only if it's the same brokerage. So if it says Century 21 Everest, you'll need to use this form. If it says Century 21 anything else, you don't need it. Okay. What about, let's say though, that for whatever reason, since Blake's in St. George and I went and listed a property down there and he was gonna write an offer, do we need it?
It's probably the same franchise.
That's right, because it's Century 21 Everest. If the name of both brokerages it has Everest in it, you need this form.
So St. George has Everest.
Yep, we have an office in St. George, yes. Okay, so I'm gonna fill out the name of the buyer, name of the seller, agent representing the buyer, representing the seller, the brokerage, so Century 21 Everest. For the property address, this goes through and just explains, the things that are gonna be different on limited agency, which we'll talk about actually next Thursday. No, this Thursday we'll talk about. So authorization for limited agency, and then we're gonna check one of the boxes, either that one agent is doing it. So if you're representing both the buyer and the seller, you'll check the one agent box. If it, like I said, if it was a different agent within our brokerage, you're gonna check the two agents box. Write in the name of the seller's agent, write in the name of the buyer's agent, both buyer and seller sign, and then just one of the agents has to sign. So we don't need both agents to sign, even if there were two, we just need one. All right. Next, wire fraud alert disclosure. So we talked about this briefly on the seller side, but I just want to re-emphasize again. When you are working with a buyer, you want to really make sure to emphasize to them of there is a lot of fraud that goes on in this business. People are always trying to look for ways to get your money. And one of the ways that they have been doing it is through wire fraud alert or wire fraud. And so what happens is they may receive an email that looks like it's from the title company saying our wire instructions have changed. So just really emphasize to your clients, double, triple, quadruple check before you wire money anywhere to make sure that it's going to the right spot. Don't trust any emails that you get, and call me and talk to me before you do. Call the title company. Don't call the title company off of the phone number if you get an email, because they'll answer it as if they're the title company. Like, we want to ensure we're calling the right people to get the right wire instructions to send the money, because once it's gone, it's gone. Okay. It'll blow up the whole transaction. So that's, you can go through, just never trust wiring instructions in the email, never send personal information, all of that kind of stuff with your client, okay? All right, and then have them sign it for the receipt and acknowledgement. Next, the affiliated business arrangement disclosure. So the purpose of this is because with Everest, we have sister companies that we would love for your clients to use, these companies. Because of that, we have to disclose that. And so you're gonna fill out this form, put in the address, put in the date. And basically what this is telling the clients is that we would love for them to use these companies, but they don't have to, okay? And sometimes some agents were always like, well, I don't wanna have my clients sign it because I don't want them to think that I'm trying to tell them they have to use them. We even put in here, in bold, you are not required to use the listed property or providers And there are frequently other settlement service providers available. So they're not agreeing to use them. It's just you're letting them know this is sister companies of ours, and we would love for you to use them, but you don't have to. All right. Next is the disclosure acknowledgement regarding lead-based paint. When do we use this?
And the home built prior to 1978.
Good job. That's the key word on that is prior to 1978. So prior, so if it was built 1978, we don't need it, but prior to, we need it. Okay, so you're gonna put in the address of the property. You should be able to, since we're on the buyer side of this talking about, should be able to just download this right from the MLS. Should already have the seller's initials in there. You're just gonna go through and have your client's initial that they've received any information, that you've given them the pamphlet, so make sure you've shared that with them through Donald. That they've read the warning statement, and then they either want a 10-day opportunity or they're gonna waive their 10-day opportunity to test for lead-based paint. In the event they are going to test for it or take the 10-day opportunity, they also then need the lead-based paint addendum. Okay, so don't forget that if they check initialing this box, which I noticed this form's updated too.
Yeah, I was gonna say
I
this is
know.
not.
I did not do a very good job of this round. I apologize.
Software.
I know. I'll still give you CE credit. How's that? But I will get that fixed on the next
Now
one.
you have to repeat it.
Because I noticed after that, it's like check boxes. I know, I feel like it. You know how many times I've been through this class?
But now it's new forms.
I know, so it's good.
How long have you been teaching this stuff?
10 years?
You love it?
Do I love teaching CE stuff?
Why do you do it?
To help you guys. Because I love you guys. That's
Oh.
why. Right? Yes.
So Ross, next time you go to the peak agent, we are supposing that those will be updated.
Yes,
This will be updated.
They will be updated. I will. In fact, I will update this probably either this afternoon or tomorrow. All right. And then I'll find something the next time that I still need to update. Okay, so will you go see if Patricia wanted to be in here? Oh, perfect
Read your
time,
mind.
perfect time. All right, we're now gonna go through and talk about the commission report. And I'm scared to now though, because I have a true expert in the commission report here, so you can correct me as I tell them all the wrong information and that I have the wrong form. All right.
So why don't you let her tell us?
Yeah, why don't you tell? Yeah, she's not going. All right, so, okay, so in order for you to get paid, so this is the fun, exciting part of this class, right here, okay? In order for you to get paid, what you have to do is go through and fill out the commission report. Now, in the event though, well, I'm gonna wait, I'll say it later. So we're gonna run through how to do this, and then I'll give you my punchline that I was gonna give you right now. Okay, so how you're gonna fill this out is first thing you're gonna do is you're gonna go through here and put in the property address. So whatever the address of the property you're closing on is gonna go there. You're gonna put in the name of the buyer there, the name of the seller, and the name of the title company in here. Now you'll notice, and I don't have, I probably should actually get the commission report on here where we could actually pull up a real one and look at it on this computer, but this is just a PDF. But you're gonna, this is, if you click on where it says residential building right here, that will be a drop down that you could choose from. So if it's commercial or lease or whatever, okay? But the default and most of the transactions, you're gonna leave this just like it is, right? All right, next step is you're gonna put in what the closing price of the property is. So you're gonna put in whatever your purchase price of the home was, you're gonna plug it in there. And then underneath that is gonna be a drop-down box where you're gonna choose from either net, gross, or a flat amount, okay? So what's the difference? Who besides these two can tell me? And if you don't know, then it's a good thing we're talking about it, right?
So the net is what we actually are getting paid, right?
Sort of.
And
The gross is what you're actually getting paid too. But
no, I mean, it depends what in your contract if you put net or gross.
right, okay, good. So that's where I'm going. So on the MLS, there's a spot that is gonna say net or gross. So when you list the property, there's a spot for the listing agent to put that the commission is gonna be net or gross. So whatever it is on the MLS is what you should be selecting here. But what's the difference? So in the event, and there hasn't really, I don't think, been much of a difference the last couple of years, has there? Almost everything's been gross, right?
No.
No, it's both.
Yeah.
Because
I think a lot more of
if
it's
there's
better.
a seller's credit, it belongs there.
Okay, good point. Okay. So I always think of it as if the seller is paying part of the buyer's closing costs and they've put net, then the commission would be 300,000 minus, let's say 5,000 in closing costs. By switching this to net would then allow you to put in the 5,000 in closing costs so that the commission will be calculated off 295 versus gross, it would be 300. Does that make sense? So that's what this is asking. So ultimately, just look at what the MLS says to begin with. But then after that, yeah, if you're giving a seller credit or something, if the commission is going to be, here's probably the best way to say it. If the commission is going to be based on anything besides just the purchase price, then you're going to change this. If the commission's based just on purchase price, leave it as gross. And that's what you want to have happen, is what I would say. Make sense?
Might also make me write a different offer too.
What do you mean?
Well, if it's on net,
Oh, yeah. Then potentially, yeah, good. Okay, so good. So then I'm gonna just select on that. If it's a flat amount, I would change it to just if the commission was just a flat amount, you'd be changing that there. And then this is gonna be, what's the percentage of commission? So again, on the MLS, what are they offering and or what have you negotiated? Because for me personally, if it's less than 2, I'm gonna negotiate, try to do everything I can to raise that up, okay? All right. Is there a commission to an outside referral company? Again, this would be a drop-down box you can click on. So if there is, if you owe a referral fee to somebody else outside of our company, you're gonna click on that where it says none, and you would say yes. And then when you do that, what's gonna happen is it'll open up another box over here that you can put in the information to who that referral is going to, okay? Commission advance company used. If for some reason, and apparently I heard George say the other day that there's been a lot more people asking for commission advances. Think of a commission advance, you can do commission advances, but think of it as like doing a payday loan or a title loan. Like it's a high commission or a high interest rate, like you're borrowing money before you get paid. And so that's what this would be saying. Is, did you do a commission advance? Typically no, but there are gonna be times.
Rose, is there a percentage when it says commission to outside referral company?
Yeah.
Commission of what amount, what?
Yeah, when you, if you click on that and put, yes, there is, then
Uh-huh.
you'd put the detail of, is it a flat amount or percentage, whatever.
You can choose either amount or percentage.
Yeah.
So do we have a typical percentage?
No, it's like if you get a referral from the agent, that's when you would put that.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, I've-
working with one that gave me a referral. So I was wondering about, I said, how to work it out.
You work. it
Whatever
out
you
with that
agree to.
person.
With the
Yeah,
other
you just
agent?
work it out with that agent, how much it's gonna be, and I would get it in writing.
Yes,
Don't
there
just-
is an agreement in writing that you
Yeah.
can fill out.
Oh, is there an agreement?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you get it in writing? Because it's funny how people change.
Yeah.
The
Okay.
other thing I wanna say,
Yes.
it is always better if you let the title company know and they pay the
Oh, yes,
referral
good.
out.
Yeah, and you can just
Okay.
send them that form and
Yes.
let them know. and then it's
They
in the form,
pay
all the
right
information.
To
at that
them.
moment,
Yeah.
yes.
Just
So
put it
we
in
don't
the-
have to do
Then,
it.
yeah,
We
it
don't
makes
have
it
to make
easier
a
for
check.
us, yeah.
And
It's
you save
easier.
money.
And you save money
Yeah.
because
Yeah, yeah,
if
good
we get
point.
all the money,
Mhm.
you pay the 6% on that money that we're going to give out.
That's good. I didn't realize that. So
Yeah.
that's good. Okay.
Have title do it.
Yep, have time.
Yeah.
Okay, next
So-
is,
Sorry, that way is understanding that I never got the money, is that why?
Yes, that you didn't get that money.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
correct. Okay, next, so the Century 21 admin fee collected. So remember, on the buyer broker we were just doing, we had $495. But the first $295 of that is coming to the company. And so that's what this is saying. Did you collect? a admin fee. Is this still worded as admin fee?
Yes.
Okay,
But
So-
you would put 495 in there.
yeah, sorry, that's what I was just gonna say, is you're gonna put 495 or 5, whatever it was that you're gonna collect. So the number that's gonna go in here is what you actually collected. So I had an agent call me just within the last 2 weeks that for some reason, they only ended up putting 295 here, but the buyer broker was like 595, so there was an extra $300. And so you're gonna put in here what you actually collected, not necessarily what the contract says. I mean, it should match, don't get me wrong, but in this scenario that I'm talking about, the agent called me and said they really owed me an additional $300, but the title company only did 295. So whatever we collected is what you want to put in.
It's on your closing docs.
Yeah. All right. Are we holding the earnest money? And if we are, you put in the amount of earnest money that we're holding. And was there any agent credits given at title? So if for some reason, like somebody left with the fridge and you said, rather than the whole deal blow up, I'll give you $500
Or you pay the home warranty
or pay the home warranty, something like that. Whatever which I'm not a fan of that. Like, I kind of wish we have to have this on here, but I wish we didn't. Because I don't want you leaving here going, oh, I can give away money at closing. Okay, I'm gonna go do that. Like,
But
Don't
it's
do it.
less money for you.
Right.
that's right.
It comes out of your commission.
So once we've filled all that in, this is the amount of money we get from the title company should match what you've put in here. Make sense? All right. Then the next thing down here is it a single agent or are you part of a team? If you're part of a team, you're gonna click on this and you'll switch that to team. Then from there, you're gonna put your name in here. It will open up another box over here and you're gonna put a percentage that is going to the team. Make sense? Although most of the teams have somebody else that's filling this out. So for Chad, like you're never gonna fill this out, so. But in the event somebody was, you would switch it to team. You're gonna put in your information, put in the team leader's information all over here. And the percentages, all of it, okay? Then,
So in the team I am currently right now, there is not a TC. They are looking for one.
whose team are you on?
La Chinita.
Oh, that's right, okay.
So they don't have one right now.
Then you're probably, I don't, I'm guessing you're filling it out.
All
Yeah.
of those commission reports are not right.
I
We don't
mean,
do them normally.
so.
So you're gonna
I'm
fill it
new
out.
here, so I'm trying to find out where
Whenever
I
you're
get.
doing something and you're not sure on commission reports, come to me.
Okay, because I never done a commission report to start with, because I'm fairly new here in Century 21, so like this is, okay. And then the other thing, obviously.
Yeah, no, we'll help you, we'll help you.
Complicated.
We'll help you with it. Okay, next thing then is, this is where the whatever you charged on that admin fee, the first 295 of that, so if you'd done a 595 or 495, the first 295 is gonna get deducted here. The other, if we did 595, let's say, or I guess this contract, we did 495, right? The other $200 then would go towards this agent base here.
And
Everybody
if you
follow me?
don't collect it, then you'll have to pay for it right here.
Yeah, and if you don't, then it'll get subtracted, thank you.
Yeah.
Which a lot of agents, I don't know, how many
It's
do,
like 50-50. I've seen
yeah,
it a lot.
50% of the
Yeah.
agents just
They just
pay
don't pay for it.
themselves.
Cause like you said earlier in that other class, they get scared about
Yeah.
it, so they're like, oh, I'll just take care
I'll
of it.
just pay it.
Yeah, that's,
Okay, so that's gonna then, this is how much you're gonna get, the commission's gonna be based on. So then you're gonna plug in here what the company share is. So in this case, what we've got filled out here is the agent's on a 70-30 split. So you're gonna put in the amount that's going to Everest, okay? So you plug that in there, so it calculates there. It'll then calculate the franchise fee, so there's the 6% that we were talking about. If you had not collected the 295, it would put it right here to subtract it out of your commission. And then here you're gonna, the default amount is that we ask you to donate $21 to the company foundation. You can change that to anything you want, including $0 if you want it. But, so you can change that to whatever you want. Then the next piece, if you're using a transaction coordinator, if there's a fee for that, you're gonna plug it in here and put their name in. This is where I was gonna say earlier, here's the good news. If you're using a transaction coordinator, Luz, you won't fill this out at all.
We just send it to you to approve.
Yep.
Review.
They'll fill it out for you. So use the TCs and then you don't have to do this.
So I can use, I need to talk to Lou, right? If I can use the company TC until we get a TC for the team.
You don't need to talk to me. You can do that.
Your team lead.
You have to talk to Lou.
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
Yeah, you ask Lou and. Oh, did you say Lou? I thought you said me.
No, he's just a little.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you said you. I gotta talk to you. And I'm like, you don't have to talk to me. Yes, Lou, sorry.
No, I wouldn't talk to you, I would. talk to-
Yeah, so yeah, ask Lou, but yeah, I would recommend just using the TC, because then they do all this for you.
And you get half off the first transaction. See if you like it.
Yay.
Yeah. Okay, so then the last piece of this is how much your check should be for, and then are you using direct deposit, yes or no? And if you do yes, then you'll typically get the money quicker, right? If they do yes,
Next day, next business day,
but if they do no, they'll get a check,
check.
and is that,
They can
Couple
pick them up
days?
here now.
They
don't
can
have
pick
to.
it up here
but,
Monday through Thursday.
Yes.
oh, okay. Oh, good to know. All right, what questions? Anything you want to add? Trish, anything you want to add?
I think you need more, like the real thing.
I know, that's-
More boxes. and
Yes.
I don't, yeah, I need
So
to
they
actually
can
do
see
it,
it.
so.
Or you can even do just like different versions of it, like one and then
Yes.
page 2 and page 3. You know,
Yeah, no, I'm gonna just get one on the computer that I can just. pull
like
up
an
and show.
Excel one.
Yeah, oh, which that's what I need to say. So you'll actually fill this out in Excel, but you can't upload an Excel to
Dot
Dotloop. You have to do it as a PDF. So you'll fill it out in Excel, but then you need to do a print to PDF, and then you'll upload the PDF. to it. Just use her and then you don't have to worry about it.
And
Yeah,
you can
'cause
just
that's-
say, an important thing, always make sure your amount that says on the title check on your commission report matches the actual title check. That is always what's
So
going
this-
to give you, that one.
Which one?
Always
Title check.
compare it to the actual title check that
This
we
one.
get. It will always be uploaded to the Dotloop, so
Oh,
you can see it there,
so the title check should match what?
that number.
The title
What,
check.
the actual check that comes from the title company should match this amount.
Oh,
And always make sure to say yes or no for direct deposit.
Yeah.
Because if you are expecting direct deposit, but you don't change that to yes, it's a no, I will give you a check. A paper check.
so it works.
Yes.
So
It works, but you have to come pick it up.
You have to add the earnest money plus the title check.
No, that,
Nope.
it auto
No.
populates.
Oh,
So you just plug in all that
Yeah, when you plug
information
in right
from your
here,
CD is where you should get it from, and then it will just.
It will
auto-populate.
calculate the bottom.
yeah, if we're holding the
But it
earnest
will,
money
it
check,
will.
you would put in the amount of the earnest money here, and then it will deduct it from
Yeah, just
the
auto does
amount
it.
so that it will match.
Yeah, because sometimes mine doesn't, so like I have to do everything like manually. I don't know, it's weird.
Huh.
Yeah, I always get, yeah, you always say that I'm doing it wrong.
are
I'm like,
you?
sorry, it's like my third time. I'm
She's like, what's your
trying."
name?
What's your name?
It's Christina.
Christina.
Yeah, Alwin.
Okay.
NGUN.
Okay.
She's like,
Yeah,
yeah,
you're like,
yeah.
I know.
I think your commission reports are messed up.
Yeah,
That's
because
why.
like.
And
That's
then
why
you
she's
get
here.
right ones
Yeah,
from
and you guys
Bree
recently
or
just
from
sent me
me.
a new one, so
Uh-huh.
yeah.
So keep that
I have
one,
the
use
new
that
one.
one.
And scrap the old one.
Yeah.
Yeah, wait, in
Yeah.
fact, will you send me the new one too?
Okay.
Because I don't know if I have the most recent
Okay.
either, so. And then we'll get it on this computer so that we can then
And
actually.
get a
do that.
live one so you
Yeah,
can.
so we can
move
show
it
it.
around.
Yep.
Yeah. the data.
Okay, awesome. Any other questions?
The
Oh,
ones
go
that
ahead,
are
Parker.
filled out, we can see them on Dotloop, right?
Correct. Yep. Yeah, in order for you to get paid, it has to be on,
I
in
just-
your loop.
Yeah, my transaction. coordinator.
Oh, it fills them out, yeah.
I've just never seen it, so.
Yeah, but it'll be in your loop, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Thanks for being here.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Only one more class for the 12-hour new agent stuff, so that's Thursday. And actually, in fact, for you guys on Zoom, hopefully they haven't dropped off yet. I know Blake, you're in St. George, so this probably won't apply for you, but everybody else, if you can be here in person on Thursday, don't be on Zoom, be here in person. Because Thursday's class, we're gonna play a game. We're gonna do Jeopardy, but it's gonna be a game. And I'm gonna put you guys in teams, like the whole class. It's gonna be fun. So for you guys on Zoom that are on Zoom right now, if at all possible for you to be here in person on Thursday, you can still do it on Zoom. We'll have, you guys will be your own team, but I promise you're gonna lose. If you're on Zoom. I've never had anybody on Zoom do well with it. And it'll be more fun if you're here in person, I promise. So be here in person if you
There's
can.
another thing. On
Well,
that,
St. George, like Blake, so.
What's that?
I said, I'm in St. George, like Blake, so we'll.
Okay, well then you guys should get together at the office at least.
Oh.
Just kidding.
so that blue square on the right side, it's for notes, for me. So anything that I need to know that it's different on the transaction, it's not a normal transaction, please write it there.
Oh, that's a good point. I usually don't say anything about that. Yeah, so just in that notes section, if there's anything you want accounting to know, type it in there.
And also, if you're in a team, you'll have Lou sign that box too.
Yes,
So she can.
she has to sign everything.
Yep, she has to see your condition report.
Oh, good to know. All right. Well, thanks for being here, everyone. See you on Thursday. We're gonna play a game. It's gonna be fun.
So, you say that you had this?
Yeah, I'm gonna go get it from my desk. My office.
Oh, okay, so
Yeah.
you have one, and then
Yeah.
do you have one too?
A card?
This is a illness
It's at the end, that comes.
Yeah, did I have you sent?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
So what's your name?
Thank you.
Like today's hours is my number.
Okay, so basically, if you just, what's the list price? Okay, so if you write an offer at $365 to them, right? The fact that it says net, you'll still get paid off $365 unless you were to go and ask the buyer to pay, like, let's say you ask the buyer to pay $10,000 in closing costs. Right. Then in that case, instead of $365 or whatever your offer is,
Right.
it would be, the commission would be based on 10,000 less, so $355.
Okay.
Yep, at 2.5%.
Thankfully, it's a cash buyer, so.
Oh, good.
Thank you.
I had a question for you.
Yes.
So I wasn't able to make it for I believe the first 3.
Yep.
And I know that, because I didn't do all of it, I couldn't get 12 credit. For the classes I did, can I like get like 6 hours and then finish off whatever? the section?
Unfortunately, yeah, no.
Okay.
It's either all or nothing, unfortunately.
So is that actually like 18 hours of like,
It's 12, well, it's 12. This would be-
well, so for the,
Oh, but to renew your license.
yeah,
yes.
it's 18 hours.
So you have to have 18 hours.
And is it actually 18 hours of class I have to do?
Yeah.
Like basically a full day? Or is it like I can like do it, those courses within less than an hour? You know what I mean?
No. Yeah, they're about an hour and 40. A 2-hour class is about an hour and 40 minutes.
Oh,
So like, right,
okay.
I mean, like we're done, it's an hour and 50 now. But typically, a 2-hour CE class is an hour and 40.
Is there like a quiz after? Do you like is?
If you're doing them online, they're gonna have something.
Okay, yeah, I was just wondering because I was like, do I have to do the full 18 if I did like 6 hours here? Like, can I do the 12? Okay, that makes sense. If
Yeah,
anything, I have to do the 18.
unfortunately.
Okay, and if I pass the day like my deadline, like what does that mean? Do you know?
Yeah, you can't practice for listening.
Until I finish it. And do I have to do like a late fee? Or
I think they give you a 30 days without a late. I might be wrong. There
Okay.
might be. I think there probably is. So, but I
Okay.
go to that RDA.
Yeah, I know. I need to actually write that down because I didn't left my notebook, but I want to start it. Can you just tell me what it is again?
Just hit right on this.
Thank you.
ARTI
ARTI.
academics, so ACADEMICS. If you just type in RDA. whatever.
I hope I spelled that right.
Yeah, if not, just Google search ARTI
Okay.
academics and it'll come up.
.com.
And then just log in there. And the thing is, if you go do that, you could just sit at your computer, turn it on, and kind of be doing stuff and listen. And then it'll pop up a quiz and then.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't-
that's what I did to
if
get
you
my
don't-
license.
Yeah, if you don't get it right, they probably will just.
Have you redo it? It's
Well,
great.
yeah, you probably just try it again.
Okay. Okay, awesome. Thank you so much.
It's the only point of the quiz is to make sure you're there listening. It's kind of like the same thing with these guys on here is the only reason that I have to tell them you gotta have their camera on is so that we can see
they're on.
that they were